elections this week for the next round of parliamentary ping-pong. One of the two amendments that were added in the Lords, in which the government says it will remove, is to guarantee the rights of EU nationals currently living in the UK. That's thought to be as many as 3 million people, many of whom have been living here for decades. The uncertainty they're facing has led to an unprecedented increase in the number of applications for permanent residency. But as our reporter Frankie Beck has discovered, that represents for them a real fear for the future.
Two women, two different lives, but they both have the same concern.
I don't know what's going to happen to me. Will I be here illegally? You know, I mean, that's a big deal. So I would have to leave, but where would I go?
I don't want to leave here because my life is here. Everything I've built up. I've got a son, I've got stepchildren.
Indrani and Elly's anxieties and worries are widely shared among EU citizens living here in the south. There are hundreds of thousands of people like them, eager to apply for permanent residency, the guaranteed right to remain in the UK.
It's the insecurity, the unknown, and it might suddenly be a very hard thing that comes out of it. There's no point in sticking your head in the sand.
Elly came here in the 60s from Holland. She's an artist and has worked all her life.
The statements by the government are so heartless in a way, and ignorant sometimes, very ignorant of what people have actually contributed to this country and are still contributing. If I stay here, I shall pay taxes until my dying day, you know.
Indrani, who's also a Dutch national, has just finished her PhD in Oxford and has lived in the UK since the early 90s.
Suddenly I am looking at, I could be deported, and I said, where do I go? This has been home for 25 years. We're suddenly up against, now you need a permanent resident card, which we never did before.
But getting one isn't easy. If you want to apply for permanent residency, you need to fill out this. It's an 85-page document which requires an awful lot of added paperwork, including 5 years' worth of P60s, historic utility bills, and even in some cases a diary of all the times you may have left the UK.
The toll it takes just emotionally and psychologically. You spend so much time worrying about it, asking questions, getting legal advice. It's your life just overnight is changed.
The tax people and the banks, they say after 7 years you don't have to keep your papers. Now I need those papers and I haven't got them anymore.
You have to fight off anxiety because you're thinking, where am I going to be? Where do I go? What's going to happen to my home? What's going to happen to my family?
Permanent residency status isn't mandatory while we are still part of the EU, and experts say there's no need to rush to apply. But there has already been an increase in applications to the Home Office, which is now facing a backlog. There's a whole list of criteria to qualify for permanent residency. For at least 5 years you need to have worked, been self-employed, a student or a self-sufficient person who has been living in the UK. But there is a major stumbling block. Students and self-sufficient people, such as pensioners or those who are able to support themselves financially, need comprehensive sickness insurance, or CSI.
Being a student and not having the CSI, I can't apply. And, though I've been here for 25 years.
I have worked for long enough and I've got a state pension and occupational pensions. I do not need CSI as long as I can prove my work history, but I haven't got any P60s or whatever else it is you need to prove, and that is why I wake up in the night.
The Home Office didn't have anybody available to speak to us about this, but they did say that there's been no change to EU immigration law since the referendum result. For now, it's not necessary to apply, but uncertainty looms. Indrani and Elly feel since the result of the referendum there has been a very real shift in attitude.
It has sanctioned, a racism.
I thought, what has been lying under the surface? that I wasn't aware of, really.
Suddenly you're being made to feel that you're not welcome.
But of course everyone always said, oh, but we don't mean you. But all the other people are just like me. We share that.
So for people like Elly, life has changed overnight. Joining us now is Monique Hawkins from the 3 Million Group. You also have applied, you've got your permanent residence
I have it now, yes.
now, but having looked at the system, but also hearing those voices about, is it the attitudes, do you think, that have shifted in the country, or is it just your experience of the system that's made you want to campaign against it?
Well, I've started to realise what the Home Office rules are. I mean, after the referendum, I thought, oh, I'll apply for citizenship because I want to solidify my position. Realised then that I had to suddenly apply for this permanent residence, which was only introduced in November 2015 as a prerequisite for citizenship. I got rejected on a technicality, got unbelievable bureaucratic treatment at the hands of the Home Office, and in this process started learning about all these people that get rejected on CSI and other things. I mean, you can have been here for 10 years, but if you then take a job abroad for a couple of years, your clock starts again, you lose all your rights.
And they were saying about having to keep all the records, which people haven't necessarily done.
That's
they didn't
right.
know they'd have to.
There's women whose utility bills have all been in their husband's name, or vice versa. There's, I know of somebody who's a EU national, divorced from her British husband, is on benefits because she's got an adult disabled son, can't possibly afford CSI, nobody ever knew about CSI. I mean, the uncertainty is real. I get really cross when the newspapers say anyone who's been here over 5 years is fine, because that's not actually true.
Because you've got to be able to prove it, and it feels like a bureaucratic system.
But it's more than being able to prove it. There are people who just do not qualify according to Home Office rules. There is such a disconnect between what politicians and the media are saying about these 5 years. I mean, Peter Bone on Newsnight said, I'll help you fill in the form, totally patronising us as though it was just a question of difficult form filling.
Yeah. And all the documents you have to provide.
Well, absolutely. And I only qualified by the skin of my teeth because I happen to now have a 5-year block. Yeah. But I took a couple of years off to look after my kids. I didn't have CSI, nobody ever told me about it. It affects students, it affects so many people. But the really important thing is that the uncertainty matters. I mean, when the Home Office says you don't need to do anything, nothing changes, it matters because immigration here is delegated down to landlords and banks and all sorts of things. So people are struggling to get jobs. They're being turned down for jobs. They're being turned down for rented accommodation. It matters.
The phrase that was used there in the report was sanctioned racism. Does it feel like that to you?
It does feel like that. I mean, I now know people who are speaking French on the tube, and they actually get addressed saying, you need to speak English here.
Right, which wouldn't have happened, do you think, before the
vote? No,
vote?
I don't think so. It's like you say, it's sanctioned racism.
Right. Oh, right. What should we be doing about this? I mean, would it just be alleviated if we were told that everyone has the right to stay?
Yes. I mean, it's as simple as that, really. It's that following the referendum result, then we've got to urgently and at a very early stage regularise the position of EU nationals living in the UK, and the easiest way to do that is to say that if you are an EU national living in the UK at the time of the referendum, July, you have status in the UK subsequently.
But that's not our fault that we can't do that at the moment. I mean, if the EU were to say yes, we will do the deal, that's it's important that people are treated properly.
Well, I think
we could do that.
I think it is our fault, in as much as it's inconceivable to my mind that we can really end up banging our fists on the table in a negotiation with the EU saying, we'll chuck our EU nationals out if you don't let our nationals stay in your country or whatever. I mean, not only is it something we need to do for the people who've lived in the UK for years and years and years and paid their taxes and have their lives in the UK, but also it's important for the UK economy in the future. I mean, 1/10 of those people working in the General Hospital in Southampton are UK nationals, and we can't conceivably throw all those people out of the country, and we ought to sort it out at the very earliest possible opportunity.
We're not going to tell people like Monique they've got to leave the country. We're not. It's just not going to happen. And at the moment, we're making them feel terrible as a result.
Well, firstly, the contribution that EU citizens make to the UK is immense. It is welcome. They are an integral part of our society, our economy, our way of life. You're absolutely right in the question you just posed to Alan. We wanted to do this really early on. The Prime Minister made that offer to her fellow European Union heads of government. Mrs. Merkel said that we couldn't do that until the process began. I regret that. I regret we didn't do this. The offer that the Prime Minister Theresa made wasn't accepted. We've now been very clear that this is something we want to achieve right up front at the beginning of the negotiations. Of course there's no question of deporting anybody. Goodness me. A country like Britain deporting
It's a hollow threat to be making to Mrs. Merkel anyway.
No, because these are quite complex matters. And the other point is we have lots of British nationals living in other European Union countries, and we want, at the same time as we guarantee the rights of EU nationals living here, to give them the right to remain and to carry on being full. We want guarantees for them too.
Well, that's fair.
You're responsible not to seek it.
Why is it not then?
It's not fair because you haven't listened to British people in Europe. They have been wanting to speak to the government, and there are newspaper reports that they've not been getting that meeting.
What is it that they would be saying? Because they want their rights guaranteed in Europe as well.
Yes, they do, but they have written really strongly. I have quotes that I can't read out now, but that they have written to say they want us to get unilateral. They have come to give evidence at the Brexit Select Committee to say they also want unilateral rights to be given to us, because they do not want to be part of a negotiation. Your very language to say that it's down to Germany not agreeing, you are going back to it being a negotiation. Now, which bit of unilateral don't you understand? Because it's not a negotiation.
They don't want to be bargaining.
It's not a negotiation, it's unilateral.
I will absolutely defend the right of the government of the United Kingdom to guarantee the rights of United Kingdom citizens living in the European Union at the same time as those rights are given to those already here from the European Union in Britain.
Guarantee the rights that are already in the gift of the UK government. Why don't you say something to them about maintaining their triple lock pensions? Why don't you say something to them about continuing to pay for their health care? All the concerns that the British people in Europe, who we work with, because we're not trying to just speak out on us to the detriment of them.
The question you have just posed goes to the very heart of the complexity of the mutuality of the assurances that we are seeking in the negotiations.
It shouldn't be mutual. It shouldn't be mutual. You should just say that we're okay.
It's a balanced thing.
Of course it should be, because it's about pension rights to accrued entitlements, and that we can make sure that those living in Germany and Spain and Portugal and France, our citizens living there, can also get those reciprocal rights to entitlement. And that has to be part of a whole agreement. And Mrs. Merkel has been very clear that we can't do that except as part of the negotiation.
You are still saying that it's part of a negotiation, and if Mrs. Merkel, after triggering Article 50, doesn't give you X, Y, Z, you're going to take away some of our X, Y, Z rights because it's a negotiation, and that goes to the heart of it.
Best rights for our citizens in the EU and your citizens here in the UK.
Let's just bring in Alan before we go.
Whichever way you cut it, if you take that line, it is a negotiation.
Yeah.
And there is everything to gain and nothing to lose by treating this unilaterally.